He's now streaming live on YouTube.
Great. Yeah, we are live.
Great. And can we send it to a Facebook page from YouTube?
I will snag it as soon as it's actually saying setting up. Okay, we're done. And now we're live. And I'm going to put it up right now. I will snag it as soon as it's actually saying setting up. Okay, we're done. And now we're live. And I'm going to. Now we're getting the echo. Woo! All right.
Keep smiling, Angela. There's people looking.
We've shortened our glitch time.
We have. Yeah, we cut it in half.
Considerably.
Next time it will be well within the acceptable margin of error for a theater performance. We'll get there. It is interesting chasing sort of what is the internet glitch du jour, right?
Yeah, and
Which
all kinds of new jargon.
Yep. Which server's the strong server tonight? We'll find out. It's good times.
Remember when that meant waiters?
Yeah, right. So for anybody who seems to be catching us on YouTube right now, which we expect is no one because we didn't tell anyone to find us on YouTube, we are just waiting to send the feed over to Facebook right now. So if you're hanging out wondering what's going on and why we're just sort of sitting here aimlessly, it's because we're waiting for that to get rolling. So once that's rolling, we'll get rolling. Angela's already rolling.
I'm dancing.
Born rolling.
Rolling in the deep, man.
Mm-hmm. How's your day, Angela?
Interesting.
Uh-huh. How so? Do tell.
Well, lots of people posting today about today being a not good day.
So something's going around.
Well, as we cycle through how we deal, today was a not so good day. And kind of true for me too.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, you know, if you try and stay focused on right now, most of the time that's okay. The minute you try to look ahead, you fall into the abyss.
It's true.
I can't imagine. I'm having a real hard time imagining June and July, and August right now is inconceivable.
Yes. Yes.
Because I just like, I don't have any coping. I don't have any coping right now for those months. Yeah. I don't know where the resources are. I don't know how to do any of it right now.
Right. Yeah, I talked with our daily artist check-in with John Tanner this morning, and John talked a lot about sort of wound up having a conversation just about what it means to be truly in the moment and how you really make a peaceful place for yourself, just functioning in the very present moment and just being in that space and not looking ahead to the next one, and just just what a real challenge that is, but particularly now, but also how essential it is right now to just stay parked right here and just be there, even though, as you say, there is so much vastness out there waiting for us that we can't begin to understand or conceive of, or it's hard. I'm bad at that.
Today I was really bad at that. Yeah. And it's like Wednesdays are great for me because Edwin Booth. It's Edwin Booth Day.
It's Booth Day.
But yeah, today was difficult.
Yeah.
Today was really difficult.
Well, I'm sorry. Well, we are here in this moment now.
I know.
The booth moment, or this strange little internet purgatory before the booth moment.
Before the booth moment.
Where we're just hanging out. What's our prognosis there, Colin?
We are live on Facebook. We've shared with the chamber page, and I think you've successfully stalled enough for people to make their way over. And
awesome. So we're rolling.
You are rolling.
Great. Thank you. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Booth fans, Angela Iannone fans, Milwaukee Chamber Theater fans, Theater Red fans, and just people who like plays fans, or anyone who's randomly stumbling upon this right now with a little scroll through the interwebs. My name is Brent Hazelton. I'm the incoming artistic director at Milwaukee Chamber Theater. It's great to have all of you with us for the second in our play reading series of plays from Angela Iannone's Booth. What are we calling this? Cycle? It's more than a trilogy.
Edwin Booth play cycle.
Okay, the Edwin Booth play cycle. Great. So this is number 2 of 4. Most of you, I want to say most of you, some of you probably know Angela as a very esteemed Milwaukee actor and director. Angela has of late also become a playwright and advanced her sort of native ability for theater scholarship in really interesting ways, which has given birth to some fun plays about Edwin Booth. And we're sharing those, produced by the first one last week, the Edwin Booth Company Presents, produced by Three Crows Theater out of Chicago. And this one, The Seeds of Banquo, as well as the next 2 coming up on the next 2 Wednesdays. You may have heard Angela referring to that, produced by our colleague company here in Milwaukee, Theater Red. And stick around at intermission. We'll be chatting a little bit more with Theater Red just to introduce you to who they are and what they're all about. But before we get to that, just real quick, Angela, what 4 plays about Edwin Booth with 2 more to come. What has inspired this?
Oh, I think, we chatted a little bit, the week before we started. And I'm in love with Edwin Booth. I'm so fascinated with him as an innovator in American theater. I'm fascinated with him as an innovator and champion of the American natural style. And our most famous international Shakespearean. But also these are conversations that I'm interested in having about the plays and about what is an American natural style and how do we deal with the classics. Each one of the plays deals with his performance and approach to a particular play in the Shakespearean canon. Edwin Booth Company Presents showed us the 19th century Taming of the Shrew and a little teeny glimpse of his Hamlet. And this play deals with Macbeth, which has always been problematic and was especially problematic for Edwin Booth partly because the critics hated him in it, said he wasn't tall enough. He was only 5'7". And they didn't believe him as a warrior, which they wanted. So his rather intellectual approach to the role got him in some trouble with the contemporary critics. But The Seeds of Banquo deals with him rehearsing and preparing to perform Macbeth.
Nice. Excellent. Is there anything else that anyone who might have missed the first one needs to know? Or are we looking at just a completely separate storyline tonight?
No, each one of them stands alone. It's Great. Kind of fun if you've seen the others because some of the people reoccur. Lawrence Barrett is back tonight. Owen Fawcett is back tonight. But each one of them is written to stand alone, just be a little more fun if you've seen the others. Yeah. Some Easter eggs.
Nice. Well, I'm going to get out of here and leave you guys to it. So excited that we're able to share this. Thank you for sharing your work with us and have fun all. I'll see y'all back here at intermission. Enjoy.
Thank you so much. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is mute my camera and begin reading stage directions. But first I'd like to introduce you to our readers. John Glowacki is Edwin Booth tonight. Corey Jefferson Hagan is Lawrence Barrett. Brian Quinn is Owen Fawcett. Marcy Doherty Elst is Mrs. D.P. Bowers. and Sasha Sigel as Minna Gale. The Seeds of Banquo by Angela Iannone. The place, the stage of the Booth Theater, New York City. The time, 1870. Edwin Booth and Lawrence Barrett enter. Already in place is a painted backdrop of an interior castle room depicting a banquet hall painted with shields. A jumble of furniture that includes 3 mismatched carved wooden chairs with fabric padded seats, an elaborate single throne chair on a dais set off to one side, a long medieval dining table, and a large lump of black stage curtains lying on the floor. A primitive gold crown, 2 pairs of heavy leather gauntlets, and 2 heavy swords are set on the table. A heavy square goblet and a modern 1870s modern coffee cup are set there as well. Edwin and Larry are in street clothes. Edwin begins to take off his coat, hat, suit jacket, waistcoat, and soft tie. He leaves his shirt buttoned. Larry takes off his hat.
Is it close now? Ned?
Hmm?
Edwin, is it close now? Your wife, Mary, is she ready to deliver yet? Is she confined?
What do you mean?
Ooh, swords.
Sabers? Put it down. What do you mean?
Is it her time? Has she been confined to her room?
Is that the term for it? Confined?
It is the word I have heard used. My wife used it. She called it her confinement. It lasts a few weeks before and after the child is delivered. Surely your first wife, surely Molly.
I was present at Edwina's birth with my wife, with my first, with Molly. We were in England, that disastrous season I played in London. I hung an American flag over her bed in the hotel so the child would be born under the stars and stripes. There was no confinement. Molly wanted me there. She wanted my face to be the first my son would see.
But it wasn't.
What do you mean?
A son. Edwina. She wasn't a son.
No. I will admit to a bit of a shock.
And now?
Macbeth.
The child, Edwin, not the rehearsal.
It isn't time yet.
What does Mary hope for?
Mary hopes to give me a son. Something about the way she is carrying, or so she says. She's convinced it is a boy.
What do you hope?
I hope for a healthy child and an uncomplicated birth. My mother had 9 children, easy as kittens.
There are 4 of you.
5, living. You haven't met Rosalie.
No, I don't think I...
She doesn't speak above a whisper. She doesn't meet new people. It unnerves her.
That still isn't 9, Edwin.
Firstborn was Junior. Second was Rosalie. Third was Henry, lost to smallpox. Him, I remember. I was 3 or 4. No, 3 when he died. Then 2 girls, Marianne, named for mother, and Elizabeth, because Papa liked the name. Both lost to cholera before I was born. Then another boy, lost in childbirth.
Edwin, you don't have to.
They crushed his head with an instrument of extraction. He lived 20 minutes. His name was Frederick while he lived. Then me, Asia, and then Joseph, the youngest.
10.
What?
That's 10. Children. You left one.
No, I didn't. 5. Living.
If you say so. How much more are you going to disrobe? Edwin, how much more clothing are you going to remove? You make me uncomfortable.
Do I indeed? This is all. For now.
Why must you... What? Shall we all strip down to our... How can you rehearse when there are women present? Half indecent.
Only half? I don't often rehearse with the ladies. My manager gives them their stage business, and I see them on the performance night. You know how I loathe rehearsing.
Then why pull me from my restful bed? I don't care to see you unbuttoned any more than the ladies should.
You assume the ladies take offense. I had to get out of the house. The atmosphere is oppressive. I must be here. Confinement. Is that truly the term? There are issues with the scenes with Banquo that trouble me.
I would think my Banquo would be the last of your worries. I can play the king, you know. I have played Macbeth before.
Have you?
When Mary's time comes, if you feel unequal to the... Childbirth is not always predictable, as you trusted me to step in and finish your run of Richard III after Molly died, after you withdrew from the show.
Mary isn't dying. She's carrying my child.
When do you rehearse the fights with Macduff? Or will you?
Yes, soon enough. That is a trifle. I shall give him the simplest of business and then dance around him. There isn't a man now living who can match me for sword work.
If you say so.
Not living.
If you remove another article of clothing, I shall leave the theater. If the ladies have a desire to see your musculature, I do not. Show me the fight.
What?
The Macduff fight. Show it to me.
Why?
I know the role. I can play it if I'm needed.
Larry, you can't play all the roles.
I know Macduff. If you'll show me the fight, I could do it.
And poor Samuel Piercy, who has been engaged and draws a salary, what is to become of him?
Just show me the fight.
Larry, my dear friend, if Mr. Piercy, who has been hired on the strength of his ability to convince the public he can not only stand against me in a fight, but better me, will be given only the simplest of business, what chance have you, who are an excellent actor, but it may be admitted, not much of a combatant?
Whoever else may admit that, I shall not.
You are playing Banquo. Let that be enough.
For now. Name which scene we are exploring, and let's get on with it. This is an unfortunate hour which to be in a theater. Do you never sleep?
Not recently.
And I haven't had breakfast.
Banquet, then. Banquet scene.
Fiend. I thought you were cutting the banquet scene. It isn't in my sides. I don't have it in my text.
No, dear Larry, not the scene, merely your presence. Banquo's person in it.
I beg your...
Banquo.
What?
Banquo, but not there. Don't look at me like that. I shall say all the lines, but the actor, you, shall not be in the scene. He, Banquo, you, is in the mind of the king. But the ghost, the figure, it's too much.
Too much. Edwin, it is a famous scene. It is full of theater magic. The appearance on the stool, the point where Banquo turns to face the king, Banquo pointing. Banquo's ghost.
Is it a real ghost? If the audience can see the ghost, why can't they see the dagger?
Because the dagger is a dagger of the mind.
Then the ghost is real?
Do you mean real as in theater real? Because there are no such things as ghosts.
Come, Larry. Every theater has a ghost. I just don't happen to believe he should appear on stage.
Edwin.
The focus in the banquet scene should be on the king, the queen, and the dialogue, not on old-timey tricks of staging and gaslight effects. How is the audience to understand what is real and what is not? Dagger. Oh, no dagger. Ghost. No ghost?
Edwin, Banquo's ghost is meant to be played by Banquo, by the actor personating Banquo.
It was my father's practice to do the scene this way. It has been the practice of many to excise the actual figure of Banquo, excise his personator.
You don't give a damn about tradition, not your father's nor anyone else's. You don't care to cut a trap in your brand new stage floor so Banquo can make an entrance from under the banquet table.
I already have a trap door cut in my floor for Hamlet, for the graveyard.
That one is way over there, where it is useless in this play. Confess, you don't want to cut a new trap.
I have 2 traps on my stage floor, 6 grooves for the flats coming up on hydraulic lifts from the basement, 6 page boys with flaming torches, and 20 assembled lords and ladies on stage for this scene. What I don't want to do is move the table. I don't care for old tricks, and I don't care for the extras tripping over you as you try to squeeze up from the trap door. Someone on stage will invariably giggle and ruin the whole thing, or we'll see your feet.
If I'm not going to be there, I mean, Banquo, then why?
Help me to rehearse as if you are there. as if you were to be there. It is important I mark the location of the figure of Banquo's ghost.
Edwin, if I'm not to be there, then it won't matter where you mark me. You could put me in the fly system or in the midst of the banquet table with an apple in my mouth. By the by, will there be food, or will the food be as spectral as the actor? This soup has only a ghost of a flavor.
Of course there won't be food. Not real food. Do you imagine I'm made of money? We'll use the fake food from the Taming of the Shrew for the table. If you were to appear in the midst of the banquet table, the big ham could hide your head.
Imperfect scholar. You want mutton, not ham. We're in Scotland.
My dear Larry, if at this point in the play, audiences are so disinterested as to identify ham or mutton on the banquet menu, I had best ring the curtain down and dance a jig. Further effort would be wasted.
Ha! Can you still dance a jig? And you'll get letters of protest if you come forth with a ham.
I can dance several jigs, should the need arise, and I'll get letters of protest no matter what I do. I am in cuts of meat, stepped in so far that returning were as tedious as go o'er.
Be careful how you mock the verse in this one, Ned. This play is more than a little cursed. Bad luck attends it.
Accursed is not a state with which I am unfamiliar.
I suggest that this is a precarious time for you to tempt fate.
So long as the audiences don't throw an entire sheep's carcass onto the stage, as they did to poor Charles Macready in my father's time, I shall consider I have escaped the curse which follows on the performance of this role.
I meant your child. And the audience tossed a sheep at Macready for his effeminate and distasteful performance of Prince Hamlet, not because he lacked both mutton and ghost in Macbeth.
The sheep was tossed during his performance of this role during the riots at Astor Place.
Perhaps he came forth with a ham and they wanted to correct his obvious confusion. And I still say you speak brave words for a man who hasn't opened the play yet.
This isn't my opening. I've been playing Macbeth since I was 24, and nothing has happened. It's only my opening with him here at the booth. Come, my faithful pocket watch. Aren't we wasting time? If you were to come on, it wouldn't be up through the floor. It would be behind the servant with the tray, a great monstrous haunch of ham. I'll be your servant. Hide behind the ham, Mr. Barrett. Hide behind the ham. Oh, you want to crouch down a little more? There's a chandelier. Ah, yes, here's your seat, Mr. Blood-boltered Ghost. You know your own degrees. Sit down. At first and last, the hearty welcome.
Huh? Thanks to your majesty!
Dear God! Mr. Owen Fawcett, what in the name of... What are you doing here? Are you drunk, man?
Why, hello, Mr. Booth. How's your wife? Is she confined yet? Oh. Evening, Mr. Barrett.
It's 6 o'clock, Mr. Fawcett.
Damn. Is it really? Well, what are you doing here?
I work here, Mr. Fawcett, and he owns the place. What are you?
I thought you were a ghost.
Well, I am feeling a bit thin, Mr. Booth, a bit otherworldly, as they say. Where did you say I was?
You are on stage at the Booth Theater, Mr. Fawcett. If not exactly behind an arras, then certainly behind a story.
And what time is it?
6 in the morning, Mr. Fawcett. Have you been here all night?
What set is this? Whose castle?
Dunsinane, Macbeth.
Oh, angels and ministers of grace. Please, don't mention that name again. I slept here?
It would appear.
Oh, I think I'm in trouble.
I am certain that you are.
I meant to meet my fiancée. She's doing some sewing on some of your costumes, Mr. Booth. A big fur hat with a creature on the crest of it.
Badger.
I didn't, Mr. Booth. I never made her trouble.
No, the creature on the hat is a badger, Mr. Fawcett.
Oh, black and white as it is, I thought it was a skunk, which did strike me a bit funny.
Mr. Fawcett, what are you doing here?
I said I meant to meet Jenny here after her sewing, after the curtain came down on the show I'm in, down the street, She asked me to wait a bit, and I must have fallen asleep.
Whoa! You smell like a brewery.
I don't. I hadn't more than one drink, Mr. Barrett. Why are you wearing a badger on your head?
It's not a whole badger. The badger is the animal traditionally worn on the sporran of the Scots noblemen of the Thanes.
Sporran?
The
I know what a sporran is, his codpiece.
It's a cod piece that hangs on the outside of the kilt. It's a purse.
Your Scottish king is wearing a dead badger head on his purse. The purse that hangs over his privates on the outside of his skirt.
I'm not wearing a sporran or a kilt. We shan't be that historically correct in this production, but it is perfectly correct to wear the badger on a headpiece.
and eat ham at the banquet.
At the ghost banquet? It should be mutton. Oh, you'll get letters about that, Mr. Booth.
It seems likely I will.
Mr. Fawcett, as you are now awake and aware, Mr. Booth and I are rehearsing. So if you don't mind...
What show is it you do, Mr. Fawcett? The one down the street?
Black-Eyed Susan. I'm playing Doggrass, though I know all the speaking parts.
You exhaust me with the thought.
Black-Eyed Susan, the flower?
The melodrama.
Doggrass?
The villain!
It's down the street.
Mm-hmm. At Wallach's.
Yes,
A sailor loses his lass and almost his life. Am I correct? Twists of fate, lost letters, suspense.
It's almost the same plot as this play, only with singing and dancing. We're selling quite well.
They're not competition.
Why is it called Black-Eyed Susan? Does he beat her?
Her name is
It's
Susan.
her name.
The sailor's lass. She's dark-eyed. And there's a lovely song in it of that title. All in the downs the fleet lay moored, their banners waving in the wind, till black-eyed Susan came on board. Oh, where shall I my true love find? Oh, Susan, Susan, lovely dear, my vow shall ever true remain. Let me kiss off each falling tear. We only part to meet again.
Ahem.
There aren't enough people here if you're rehearsing the ghost banquet, gents. That'll be a bit patchy for you, won't it?
Yes.
Can I be of assistance? If it is truly 6 in the morning, my Jenny won't be up for hours yet. And if I were to turn up now, I wouldn't get so much as a kind look, let alone a bit of breakfast and a quick...
Mr. Fawcett.
Cup of coffee, Mr. Barrett, cup of coffee.
So, you know Mac...
Ah, superstitious. Very well. You know the Scottish tragedy?
Well, I couldn't play the Scot King himself, but you may be aware that my family has been in the theatrical profession since the time of David Garrick. My grandfather's uncle played character roles in the company of that great man. I am the 7th in the line of Fawcett's upon the stage.
A theatrical dynasty.
Is that your way of saying you do know the play, then?
All the assorted lords and thanes, Caithness, Menteith, Ross, and Lennox.
Angus?
He's usually cut, isn't he? Or combined with Ross?
Angus is cut. Ross is largely non-speaking. Macduff gets most of his lines.
Well, I can do them all, down through to the witches, and I am at your service.
What, no Scots queen?
In a pinch, Mr. Booth, and with plenty of time to shave. The corseting might be a problem.
Mr. Booth has played the role with Miss Charlotte Cushman as the Queen. You're a mere slip of a creature next to her, and probably needs less shaving.
Shh, now.
Yes, she's a tall girl, Miss Cushman.
Ned, if we've got Mr. Fawcett here prepared to help, might we go back to the scene on the heath, one in which I actually appear, where we first encounter the witches?
If you don't mind my saying, gents, I'm glad this isn't my theater. This is a cursed play, and it makes me uncomfortable speaking those words.
Only a play, no more cursed than any other.
I don't know as I agree with you, Mr. Booth. A man is required to visit some dark places for the proper playing of the role of the king and the queen, for any of the roles, really, let alone the horrible things that happen on stage that have happened. The deaths of children, dismemberment, ghosts, devils and fires, buckets of blood. It's the dark places a mind must become comfortable with.
It's a play about honor, free will, and rightful inheritance. The historical King Macbeth ruled Scotland well for many years.
And the historical King James of England, during whose reign the play was written and who believed himself descended from the historical Banquo, was historically afraid of ghosts and witches and things going bump in the night. And tobacco.
A thinking man's King of Scots. The critics won't thank you for taking that view. They want a warrior, a hulking, roaring, damned, blood-soaked brute. Nothing complicated, nothing that makes him think.
I'm afraid in the hulking and roaring, I shall disappoint. I find him heartbreaking and terrifying. Damned for an ambition that should be rewarded. One step down the wrong path.
Wrong path. Ned, he kills the king, conspires, plans, executes.
It's not that simple. Never able to measure up, not able to please, not his wife, not his subjects, not his critics.
Are we still talking about the play?
We waste time, blasted Heath.
There has been a great deal of interest since it was announced. Ticket sales are good. Profit should relieve all fear of bad luck, and nothing has happened, Mr. Fawcett.
Nothing has?
Gentlemen, first scene.
If you like, we can pick up the banquet scene later, Larry.
You can, it seems, rehearse that scene all by yourself. Blasted Heath, Mr. Fawcett.
Well, starting off with a bloody authentic spell and a curse on the family. But it isn't my theater. Now, which?
What are you doing?
Deed without a name. Where will you enter?
There.
Edwin points.
Thunder! There will be thunder, yes?
All varieties. Low, distant, rumbling.
How many poor souls do you have working the thunder sheets?
I have provided employment for 4, just for the thunder, and 2 for blood.
We must keep those many, many bodies safe that live and feed upon your majesty.
Did you just, Larry, did you just quote Hamlet to me?
In truth, we'll be lucky if your thundermen aren't too drunk to read their cues. I beg your pardon, no offense meant.
None taken. They can read.
Thunder! Where hast thou been, sister? Killing swine, sister. Where thou? A sailor's wife had chestnuts in her lap and munched and munched and munched.
Shall we let him run through all of this? We're wasting time.
Cutting a good portion of this, but let him play. He's enjoying this.
You're cutting the witches.
Some of them. Some of it. There will still be 3 of them.
There's a comfort. Will all of them be visible?
Give me, quoth I, right thee witch, the rump-fed Ranian cry.
Can we compress, Mr. Fawcett? Time.
It's the shortest play he wrote. There is no need to rush.
He's right. It is.
I'll drain him dry as hay. Sleep shall neither night nor day hang upon his penthouse lid. He shall live a man forbid. Weary said night 9 times 9.
Oh, Mr. Fawcett, apply alacrity.
A drum, Macbeth doth come. The weird sisters hand in hand.
Wayard.
What?
Wayard. 2 syllables.
Mr. Forrest used to tell the boys to pronounce it that way. Didn't go over well.
No.
My father used to insist upon it. The witches aren't weird, as in strange. They are fate. Destiny.
They are, at this moment, tedious. Can we move on? Please him. Say Wayard. Disyllabic.
The Wayard sisters hand in hand. It's still 2 syllables, even if one says weird. Posters of the sea and land, thus to go about, thrice to thine, and thrice to mine, and thrice again to make up 9. Peace, the charms wound up.
You and I will be entering from far upstage, Larry. I'm bringing in horses. We'll be seen dismounting them with the men upstage there.
Horses.
Well trained, I assure you.
I'd like one without any frisk in it, please. If you must bring horses into it. I served during the war between the states, Ned. Captain in Company B of the 28th Massachusetts Infantry. I've had my fill of the vicious beasts.
Yes, of course. I had forgotten your service. No frisk. We'll leave the horses here at our entrance. My march music will be played. We stop the horses, and I say, "Command thy people a halt upon the heath." Prompto will repeat the word halt from the wings, and it will echo twice among the extras.
Halt!
Halt!
We then walk toward the front of the stage. So foul and fair a day I have not seen.
How forest called to fours?
Off stage. That line is directed off stage.
What?
You aren't asking me for directions to Forres. You are wondering how far we still must ride.
Edwin, that...
Do you not see? At this moment, we both are lost.
What are these, so withered and so wild in their attire, that look not like the inhabitants of the earth and yet are on't? Live, you? Or are you aught that man may question? You seem to understand me by each at once her choppy finger laying upon her skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so.
Speak, if you can. What are you?
All hail, Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis. All hail to Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor. All hail, Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter.
Kneel.
The witches kneel?
Yes, he's going to be king. They have to kneel.
He doesn't know that yet, Ned. He doesn't know he's going to be king.
Of course he does. The moment the witches say it, he knows it's true. This second, when they kneel, name a hunger and bring it to truth, yes? He's next in line. Kingship in this place does not go by inheritance, it goes by merit. And he has earned it. He's entitled, and he's wanted it. The witches just confirm it. Duncan is old. Duncan is a drunk. I should be king.
You're ahead of yourself.
I don't think so.
And you are serving ham at the ghostless banquet.
I'm right about this.
Are you? Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? Are you all right? You look ill.
This isn't me. I'm in the play. Keep going.
It's a disturbing play, Mr. Booth, I've told you.
Yes, you've made your opinions clear, Mr. Fawcett.
You have men playing the witches, don't you, Mr. Booth? I mean, to say, some traditions should be observed, even if one is said to be a groundbreaker. It isn't something women should dabble in, these lines, the things they do.
Of course, I have men playing the witches. I would never subject a lady to...
It's all right, Ned. He was just asking.
I played an engagement with lady witches in it once. 'Twas me and Charles Abbey. Abbey was the funniest witch I ever saw. And, well, it was a young woman.
Young. Disgusting.
Yes. And the company was too small and too hurried together to afford a third man for the witch. They got a young woman to do it. Didn't pay her, of course, had to do it for the experience. Silly git. Anyway, the audiences let us hear about it. We were like to be hissed from the stage. Halfway through it, they had the prompter put on her costume and go on with his lines written out on a scrap of paper. He was wretched, but at least he was masculine.
Shall we go on, gentlemen?
Yes, please. It's all, the stage business is traditional here.
Is it? Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? In the name of truth, are ye fantastical, or that indeed which outwardly ye show? My noble partner you greet with present grace and great prediction of noble having and of royal hope, that he seems... I'm up. What is the...
That he seems rapt with all.
Of course. That he seems rapt withal. To me you speak not. If you can look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favors nor your hate.
Hail, 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 lesser than Macbeth and greater, not so happy, yet much happier. Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none.
What? Should we stop, Ned?
No, never do that. Keep going.
Have we, oh, is that a cut? Can't really cut the bit about Banquo's kiddies being kings, though, can you? Or, Mr. Booth, if you want to stop. He looks pale.
No, go on, if you would, Mr. Fawcett.
So all hail Macbeth and Banquo, Banquo and Macbeth, all hail.
Into exit, right, Mr. Fawcett.
Ah.
Stay, you imperfect speakers. Tell me more. By Sinel's death, I know I am Thane of Glamis.
Are you all right, Mr. Booth?
Yes, fine. This is my father's ring. That is Macbeth. Sinel is his father. By his father's death, he inherits Glamis.
Oh, sorry, thought you had a pain.
I thought you said you knew the play.
Not with rings and weirds and the like in it.
By Sinel's death, I know I am Thane of Glamis. But how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief, no more than to be Cawdor. Say from whence you owe this strange intelligence, or why, upon this blasted heath, you stop our way with such prophetic greeting.
Is there some plan to keep the horses quiet this long while you speak, Ned?
And is there some further plan to keep them from,
Enter Mrs. D.P. Bowers, a piece of paper in her hand.
Booth. Mr. Edwin Booth. Curse you, Mr. Booth. I've never heard of anything so ridiculous.
What's she talking about? Mr. Fawcett, don't you move.
I don't want to be in this. Now she's cursed him rehearsing this play. Oh, damn, damn.
I said don't move. Good morning, Aunt.
I've asked you not to address me as your aunt, Mr. Barrett. My dear niece is dead now, rest her soul, and no longer married to your wastrel of a brother. We are not related.
Good morning, Mrs. Bowers. I hope I see you well.
Don't try to charm me, Edwin Booth. I'm immune to you. This, I'm not to touch you unless directed to do so specifically by Mr. Booth, and to keep a decorous space between us on stage. Is there a measurement for your definition of the word decorous? Is that a hand span? Enough room for a crinoline? Leave space for the angel of the Lord between us?
Oh, Mrs. Bowers.
I'll ask you not to raise your voice to me, ma'am.
Oh, now I'm not to speak above a whisper too? All of you Booths are mad as hatters. I'm not to touch you. I am your wife.
I will correct you, Mrs. Bowers. You are playing my wife. You are not, in fact, married to me.
Well, there is a blessing. And I'm none of your squealing stage door sycophants, neither, Mr. Booth. Your current state of undress has no effect upon me.
How are you then to play my wife? The dearest part of my soul, the seat of my ambition, and my eternal care and comfort, if I have no effect on you.
Mr. Booth, how am I to play your wife, the most famous wife Shakespeare ever wrote?
There is Juliet.
Juliet is a child. How am I to play a complete woman, a complete wife, if I'm not to be permitted to touch you? How can the audience believe we are affectionate? How can they know her power if I'm to observe an angel's wingspan between us?
The power of their relationship doesn't come from them rushing headlong into embraces, Mrs. Bowers. It is to be hoped the audience is smart enough to know what deeds are done in the dark. This relationship begins at a point of power and crumbles from there. Do you conceive that she is driven mad by the normalcy of their relationship? No! I say no, Mrs. Bowers. She is driven mad because of what they no longer do, of what they no longer share, by his deliberate excising of her from his life, by her withdrawal from him, and his dedication to what he believes is his higher calling.
She is driven mad by the deed of death between them.
There is no deed of death between them. That deed is his alone. There is only the dead child between them.
His calling.
The dead child? What dead child?
His throne, his kingship, his rule, by whatever path. I'll not have it said that this Macbeth dances attendance on his queen and is pushed and pulled along by her thirst. The desires are his. The drive is his. The crown is his, to share or not to share. But he isn't a woman's puppet.
Unlike the king you played to Charlotte Cushman.
She towered over me by half a foot. She's got arms like Christmas hams and a voice like a war trumpet. She and Edwin Forrest were well suited to play opposite each other. In these roles, the two of them bellowing and stomping about like bulls. I demand a more delicate approach from you. Mrs. Bowers, pray observe a distance between us. Pray do not clutch at me like a dying, like a drowning, like a, just think of something else to do. The child they lost. Macbeth and his wife, that dead child. Excuse me a moment.
Edwin exits.
I'll see to him.
Is it his wife? Did she lose their child? Is that why he...
No, Mrs. Bowers. Mrs. Booth is not yet confined. Mrs. Bowers, Edwin Booth has borne the most private of tragedies in the glare of the public eye with a stoicism that would do honor to the ancient Greek philosophers. What happens on stage is more personal to him than any of those burdens. This is about you. I'll see to him.
He exits.
I didn't know he had a brother, Mr. Barrett.
You wouldn't. He never mentions them. There are two. The older one, Joseph, pretends to act, but it's no more than an easy way to make money for drink. His younger brother, Louis, is a fair enough talent. I'm not to touch him? Oof. Mr. Booth.
Shadows and light, Mrs. Bowers.
What?
Mr. Booth was the first actor in America to insist that the house lights be turned out. Did you know that, Mrs. Bowers? The first to ask the audience to sit in the dark to observe his performances.
I don't know what that has to do with anything, Mr. Fawcett. And I'm not certain that was the best idea anyone ever had, to let them all sit out there in the darkness.
Some of us, Mrs. Bowers, were born to stand in the sun. Sturdy people of the earth. Honest, sunlight people. Mr. Booth, standing in the sun, is a slight and half apologetic creature. If it weren't for that head of hair, you mightn't notice him at all. But this is his kingdom. When all is dark and the stage light falls upon him, he's a thing of magic, like a prince right from a fairy story.
He pulls a card with a picture of Edwin from his pocket.
Looky at this here. Huh?
Is that a calling card?
It's a picture postcard, really. Mr. Booth as Hamlet. I've had this one for a few years now. I bought it the first time I saw him on stage. Cost me more than my ticket.
I remember my sister and I buying the tinsel postcards at performances when we were children. Beautiful colored drawings of all the characters, all covered over with bits of tinseled paper.
Larry enters quietly and stands listening.
Oh, this is no drawing, Mrs. Bowers, and there's my fascination. I never saw anything like that performance. His Hamlet it was. I never saw anyone who looked like Mr. Booth before. And this is him, isn't it? Not a drawing. This is himself as Hamlet, like I just saw on the stage.
Handsome?
Not just that. You and me, Mrs. Bowers, we've been around long enough to have seen some handsome men and beautiful women before. And fine actors. Ha! His father was a fine actor. Mr. Barrett is a fine actor. We've seen those too. But sitting there in the dark, I didn't see an actor, or I didn't see any acting. Not like anything you could say for sure wasn't him. Well, I quite wanted a picture of that. Can't tell where Mr. Booth ends and the character begins. Is it acting if you aren't sure that anything other than the realest life you ever saw is going on?
In perfectly spoken verse and with every consonant sounded? Mr. Fawcett, I'm not so smitten by Mr. Booth.
You will be. Mr. Fawcett, I can get him to sign that for you if you like.
Oh.
Have you seen his Hamlet, Mrs. Bowers?
No. I have had something of my own career to look after, Mr. Barrett. I've seen Miss Charlotte Cushman's Hamlet several times.
Of course. And what what a
Performance.
yes. But if you had seen Edwin's Hamlet, there is a moment of all of them.
Which?
He plays an entire scene in Hamlet with nothing of him visible except his hand.
Oh, the graveyard scene. That one is a great dark scene.
In the graveyard scene, when the body of Ophelia is brought in, with Hamlet and Horatio near a gravestone, where would you expect Hamlet to be?
Downstage center, in the light.
Ned plays it upstage of the Horatio, with only his hand visible, dangling over Horatio's shoulder and down the middle of his back. His face is obscured, shadowed. Only his hand is seen. As the important dialogue in the scene is heard, we see only his fist clenching in moments of anguish and relaxing when he drops in his grief. As he listens to the news of Ophelia's death, we hear it too. It's so smart.
This is a long way to come to say, do as he asks, isn't it? And this isn't Hamlet, at which the world agrees he is sublime. This is Macbeth, a role which has vanquished, if not better actors, than taller ones, shall we say? Perhaps if you would consider rehearsing with me.
Mr. Booth loathes rehearsing.
Best of luck with that, Mrs. Bowers.
But I could run the scene with you. I know the role of the king.
Oh,
Enter Edwin. He has splashed his face and hair with water. Larry offers him his handkerchief. He wipes his face with it and hands it back.
Mrs. Bowers.
If I might make an appointment to meet with you tomorrow, Mr. Booth.
At a more civilized time, it should be hoped.
Tomorrow.
I'm unwilling to concede all touching, Mr. Booth. We shall have to reach a compromise. You shall have to rehearse with me, or we shall spend the entire run of the show chasing each other across the stage, you in retreat and me in pursuit.
That would be a new spin on it, wouldn't it?
You didn't see the one he did with Miss Cushman.
Not tomorrow. Come this afternoon. After you've dined, I shall be here. Mr. Barrett shall be here.
What? Rehearsing? Are you?
I may have the thunder sheets working by then.
A young woman enters, breathless and running. She runs towards Edwin. She throws herself at his feet and grasps his knees.
Oh, please, 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 if I could have a word.
Oh, for heaven's sake, don't touch him.
What are you? Whence come you?
Oh, please, let me speak with you, Mr. Booth.
Miss Gale.
Larry assists her up.
You can see her too.
Miss Gale. What are you doing here? Ned, this is Miss Minna Gale, a novice actress come recently to town. Miss Gale, Mr. Edwin Booth.
Damn.
Oh, everyone knows Mr. Booth. Please, Mr. Barrett, may I speak with him? With you both?
What's got into you, Minna? Why are you running about the streets at this hour, and where's your hat?
Well, I've lost it somewhere, Mrs. Bowers. Hello, Mr. Fawcett. Jenny's looking for you. Please, Mr. Booth, may I speak with you? Have I come upon you unprepared? I'm sorry, I've lost my hat. I've run all the way.
Is it my wife? Is all well?
Oh, I don't know your wife. I want to talk about the play, about a part in your play. Mr. Barrett said...
Oh, double damn.
Miss Gale.
You said I might. You said he wouldn't mind.
Did you?
Excuse me, Mrs. Bowers, can I see you to the omnibus? I might stop in and see Jenny. It seems she's awake now.
I walked.
Then I'll walk with you, Mrs. Bowers.
I'll walk as far as the street with you. You've awakened a thought, Miss Gale. I'll just send a message to my wife, if you'll excuse me. And when I return, Miss Gale, you may make your request.
You don't need to disturb yourself, Ned. Miss Gale.
Has run all the way from her lodgings with no hat on her head to make some request of me. At your prompting, it would seem, I'll hear her.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. I'll wait.
Edwin gestures to the chairs.
Over there, perhaps. Catch your breath.
Owen, Mrs. Bowers, and Edwin begin an exit.
Mrs. Bowers, this afternoon, if we might, I have some ideas for how we end the banquet scene. I'm quite unsatisfied with...
Does it involve touching you, Mr. Booth?
Oh, damn it.
The crown. Mrs. Bowers, it has to do with touching the crown.
They are gone. Larry crosses to Minna, sits next to her.
Miss Gale.
She kisses him.
Minna.
I shouldn't have come. You don't need to say it.
I haven't had time to speak to Ned about you. You haven't given me time.
Well, I couldn't wait. I want to be in this play. I want to be Mrs. Bowers. I want to be Lady Macbeth.
I never promised you that, Minna. I said I would see if there were something. The lady in waiting, perhaps. She has a speaking role.
I don't want to be lady in waiting. I do enough of that.
That was unkind. Minna, if Ned suspects, if he thinks there is something between us, He won't hire you on. You've never met a bigger prude than Edwin Booth.
He doesn't seem that way. He's half undressed.
He's no fool. He knows his power. He knows he's beautiful.
Well, he isn't to me.
Don't treat me like an idiot, please. Here you are, throwing yourself at his feet and begging for an audience, as if he were a king.
I've done the same with you.
And do you play me as obviously as you are playing for him? How far does your ambition reach?
Now who is unkind?
Tell me the truth, Minna. I won't be made into a ladder on which you climb. You won't step over me into the bed of Edwin Booth. He wouldn't have you anyway. Do you imagine you were the first actress to think she can secure a career through him? They've been chasing him since he was 15, young and not so young, men and women both. He likes to give out that his father used to lock him in the dressing room when they toured together to keep Edwin from watching him play, to keep Edwin from a life in the theater. That was a lie, and Ned knows it too. Old king of the American theater, Junius Brutus Booth, used to lock his beautiful man-child in the dressing room to keep him safe, to keep his crown prince safe from plots and schemes. And grasping hands. If you make that kind of grab for him, he'll see through you like a pane of glass. You only think you're that good as an actress. The woman doesn't live who can fool him that way.
I only want a chance. I only want to act. And I want to act with the best. That means Edwin Booth.
That stung a bit.
Well, I haven't acted with you yet.
So you say.
That no one knows about us is proof that I am a great actress.
'Tisn't. Lying isn't acting. Hiding isn't acting. Painful, vulnerable truth is acting. Telling the truth about your heart and soul is acting.
Then let's tell.
No, I won't. I can't. You must wait, Minna.
I don't wait anymore. You are already here. You are his second leading actor. You inherit. I want to be here.
Do you? Second. Ha! Who is Banquo's wife? Why isn't she at the dinner party?
Banquo doesn't have a wife.
And yet his son Fleance has a mother, or had.
Well, he hasn't written one. Shakespeare doesn't write many mothers. He certainly doesn't write mistresses, or many wives either. But Macbeth has a wife.
The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now? Lady Macduff.
Has he chosen a Lady Macduff? Maybe I could play her.
He's cut out Lady Macduff. I told you, he's a prude. The whole scene with the murder of Lady Macduff and Macduff's son is gone. He'd never kill a woman and child on stage. He hasn't cast the role of Banquo's son, Fleance, yet.
Fleance?
For now, Edwin still follows the tradition of casting young women as the boy children, possibly to avoid real children on the stage or their parents backstage. Or perhaps he doesn't have any scruples about the attempted murder of girls dressed as boys.
A pants role? I don't want to play a boy.
I don't know that you would be very convincing, come to that. Tell him the truth about wanting to act with him, and then let me do the rest. You must begin somewhere, Minna. Be content with the lady in waiting. If I can get it for you, better things will come.
I want them now. He didn't seem to like Mrs. Bowers. Maybe...
Do not hope it. Mrs. Bowers is a practice actress who has been on the stage more years than you have been alive. She'll do as he asks. I've seen it before. And probably do it better than he had imagined it. Minna.
They are still close together when Edwin enters.
So fair and foul a day I have not seen.
I'm beginning to understand your dislike of rehearsals, Ned. This one isn't much of a... Is all well, Mrs. Booth?
We wait.
Mr. Booth, may I please have a word with you, privately?
You mayn't, Miss Gale. You cannot possibly have anything of a private nature to say to me. You may speak in front of Mr. Barrett. I take it you two know each other.
A protege of mine, Ned. She's come about a position.
Indeed. I thought you were a ghost when you entered, Miss Gale. You came so fast and light. If thou hast any sound or use of voice, speak to me. If there be any good thing to be done that may to thee do ease, and grace to me. Speak to me.
I beg your pardon?
Hamlet, Horatio, to the ghost.
Oh, I don't know Hamlet.
You should. You're the right type for Ophelia, if you can act.
I can vouch that she can.
High praise, Miss Gale. Mr. Barrett doesn't often admit to talent in others. It happens I am not mounting Hamlet this season.
No, I came... There has been encouragement from Mr. Barrett. I thought...
A fair thought.
What?
It's still Hamlet, to Ophelia. The line finishes, to lie between maid's legs.
In other versions of the script, not in mine, I cut the references to...
What?
Nothing. The fair thought is nothing.
You have lost me.
What is it you require, Miss Gale? I am tame. Pronounce.
Mr. Booth, if there were anything I might do in your company, anything at all, perhaps something in Macbeth, I would be so honored. I'm very good with children. Perhaps Lady Macduff would be...
Miss Gale, we only say the Thane of Fife has a wife. We do not see her.
Much like Banquo's ghost.
Perhaps you need a second, a double, for Lady Macbeth? If Mrs. Bowers should be unwell...
I meant to speak to you today, Edwin. My thought was for the lady in waiting.
Ah, but the lady does not care to wait. Do I perceive?
Gentlewoman.
Miss Gale.
Mr. Barrett said when we were preparing, he said that she was a gentlewoman, not a servant, but an equal.
Did you, Mr. Barrett?
I must have done.
Perhaps the term is generous, in all honesty, Miss Gale. It usually depends on what costume is available for that scene. The determination of the class of the character so often hangs on what fabric is used or what hat she wears, yes?
I don't care what she is called. I will do anything, Mr. Booth.
It appears you will, Miss Gale. If you will give us some time to talk it over, I assume Mr. Barrett knows how to reach you. I will send a note round in a day or so. We will let you know our decision.
Is that the royal we?
Do you need me to read something for you? Is there something...
No, I have seen what I need to. Unless, Mr. Barrett? No? I thought not. Ah, my dear Larry, if you would make sure Miss Gale gets a carriage home. Have you the money for fare, Miss Gale?
Yes, thank you. I do.
Then I am pleased to have met you, Miss Gale. A minute only.
The pleasure is mine, Mr. Booth.
Thank you, Ned.
Hie you to horse! Adieu!
Larry and Minna exit.
Our fears in Banquo stick deep. And in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. 'Tis much he dares. Gah! He chid the sisters when first they put the name of king upon me, and bade them speak to him. Then, prophet-like, they hailed him father to a line of kings. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown, and put a barren scepter in my grip, thence to be wrenched by an unlineal hand. No son of mine succeeding. If 't be so, for Banquo's issue have I filed my mind, put rancors in the vessel of my peace only for them, and mine eternal jewel given to the common enemy of man, to make them kings, the seeds of Banquo kings.
Enter Larry.
Can she act?
Yes.
But not Lady Macbeth.
She's barely more than a child, Ned. Too soon for Lady Macbeth.
He wants it.
Yes, she does.
What is it you do, my friend?
I'll turn that question back to you. I'm not your enemy, Edwin.
Nor my rival.
I should prefer not to strive against you for anything.
And I should prefer not to have you try. I have spent some small portion of my fortune, more than most people know, paying for my brother's missteps. After his death, the letters came in by dozens, some with locks of hair, some with daguerreotypes to prove a likeness, all to get support for a supposed bastard byblow. Dozens of faces of children, dark-haired and dark-eyed. If he had been indeed as busy as the claim suggested, he peopled half the country and left a wealth of heirs. I have paid and paid and paid to silence the appeals.
Did you believe them?
No. He had plenty of opportunity to prove such an ability, and he wouldn't have given a damn for the heartache it would have caused. If he had fathered a son, he would have stood on a rooftop crowing, and damn all consequences. No, I never believed them. And even if he had before he I would never have confessed it. His legacy was not one to leave a son. Treason and infamy are not an inheritance. Dishonor is not an inheritance.
Minna is not. We have not.
Yes, you have.
There are
French letters. I know all about them.
You surprise me.
You are the one full of surprises today. I'm surprised you used one.
They are uncomfortable.
Yes.
How would you know? Do you know?
I've not always been a married man. This is a dark path, Larry. If she isn't already with child, she may be, if you continue. French letters or no. If I have her here, and if I do, it will be to please you and not myself. You will lose her. Not to me, not the way you fear. You will lose her to her ambition, and you will lose your honor to her ambition as well.
You don't know that.
I do.
Ah, yes, your gift of foresight.
I don't need foresight to tell you that. One glance, and I knew her to her marrow. There isn't enough darkness in her to play Lady Macbeth, and there never will be. She isn't steel and skill. She's soft and striving. I know the appeal of that, my friend, in Ophelia, yes, and perhaps soon, Julie and Richelieu, others of that line. I know the type. I know.
Hire her. Lady in waiting, gentlewoman. Have her come in and learn Mrs. Bauer's business. Let her learn. Not all of us spring complete to the summit, polished and prepared. Not even you.
Larry, damn it. You and I have discussed this before. Your heartfelt wish to found an acting academy is absurd. Learn what? She already has a pretty face and a graceful figure and a yielding quality that pleases. But when those fall away, as they certainly will, what then? You can't teach someone to act, Larry. You can only sharpen a mind already framed by nature to seek the... And Miss Gale, I've told you, she doesn't have that.
I think you underestimate her. Nevertheless, let her be the one to make that discovery.
Ah, and then she will need comfort.
She may.
Larry, if the others begin to gossip...
They shan't. We shall act our parts without fail.
Lying isn't acting! I don't like this, Larry. I don't like it. And if there should be issue, you have 2 daughters, Larry. 2 legitimate daughters. A great and valuable word, legitimate.
No son.
Well, your wife is not past her bearing years, Larry.
She has passed. She does not care to repeat the experience, any of it.
Ah.
Then why don't I divorce her?
I didn't ask that. I wouldn't.
I cannot. I cannot blame her for being frightened of childbirth, and I cannot...
Didn't ask.
I cannot support 2 households on my income as an actor. Not that you aren't generous, Ned, but it can't be done.
And this longed-for son with Miss Gale? I am woefully unschooled, Larry, but even I can do those numbers. That is still 2 households.
If you can peer into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not.
You're a fool.
I am in good company. Will you have her? Will you?
As?
Lady in waiting, second for Mrs. Bowers, both.
Pay half her salary.
Half.
See what a simple thing you make of me. I'm to support your mistress and keep a secret that isn't mine. Play a hoodman blind with the rest of my company to please you in your quest for an heir. This blood, do you think I'm as easily played upon as a pipe?
Hamlet.
To Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, puppets, liars, and traitors.
Which do you imagine me?
Pay half her salary or I won't engage her. If she has to be replaced because of a lack of letters from France, you'll pay to do that too.
Don't do this to me, Edwin. We've been friends.
Thou art e'en as just a man as ere my conversation coped withal.
Stop it. Stop.
Nay, do not think I flatter. For what advancement may I hope from thee, that no revenue hast but thy good spirits to feed and clothe thee?
Edwin, stop this now. I have never asked you for anything.
Your livelihood?
You asked me here.
I wanted to work with my friend.
You wanted to work with someone who would indulge you, either out of love or out of fear.
Do you fear me?
I fear your ambition.
And I fear your fall from grace.
Then we appear to be at an impasse. I remember the first time I heard your name. Have you heard about Ned Booth? Did you read about the hope of the living drama? Suddenly that name was in everyone's mouth. Not Junius Brutus Booth, but his son, Edwin, who was just after your father, 54, 5. Your father wasn't long dead. Couldn't have been gone more than a year.
Then it was 53.
Very well. 1853. The first time I heard it. And then years of it. A shadow across the land, across the stages of the land. A drumming like those that announced the arrival of Macbeth. Booth. Booth. And then, in the year of our Lord, 1857, those of us in residence in the company...
Burton's New Metropolitan Theater, New York.
New York. Those of us in the resident company were informed that young Mr. Booth had been engaged to play the leads. All of them. And we would be given business for the next play by him. That was not news designed to please.
You or everyone else?
Anyone. Me in particular. Who do you think you replaced? Of course, we knew your older brother, June, and your...
Don't, please. Please.
And you can stop that as well. In 1857, what was he, 19 years old? Hadn't made his stage debut yet.
I swear as I stand here, I will strike you to the ground. Do not let that name pass your lips in my presence.
I was going to say we knew your father. Had seen him act. Some in the company had seen you trailing along behind him. But so far, none of us had seen you act. Some of us were convinced that you could not.
You?
All the men, anyway. Your recent tour with Miss Catherine Sinclair, so very newly and scandalously divorced from Edwin Forrest, the job with Miss Laura Keene, all due to...
Careful.
You can't dance around this, Edwin. Everyone knew. Those jobs were all due to your... your appeal, your looks, and your father's name, not your talent. At least not your acting talent. We owed you nothing, child of privilege.
privilege.
Theatrical royalty, the crown prince. I was completely prepared to hate you like poison. I was waiting to do so.
Whereas I was completely prepared to trust and respect you.
Then you walked in.
To face an assembled company looking much like a hanging jury.
Shorter than we thought you would be. Slender. Turn you sideways and you would disappear. Pale as paper and hair down to your shoulders, spilling about that drawn, too thin face.
And you with your timepiece, letting me know I was slightly late. Not a good start.
Your clothes didn't fit, and you have never been able to tie a tie. And the cape.
I confess the cape.
No disadvantages were obstacles to you. You came in and in a voice like velvet began to give us the business of the play as you wanted it done. You were calm, polite, and sweet-natured.
As bad as that?
Worse. You knew your craft. Within minutes, we all adored you.
You?
You were magic.
There is no magic, Larry. It's cold, hard, bitter, lonely work.
There it is. There is the word. Lonely. I don't mind hard work. I don't mind the cold from that moment to this that comes of standing always in your shadow. But I do mind the loneliness. Let me have Minna here, out of our friendship.
So I lose none in seeking to augment it, but still keep my bosom franchised and my allegiance clear. I shall be counseled.
That is Banquo's. Those are my lines.
Yes, they are, my friend. When this goes wrong, remember that you asked me to do this. Very well. Have her engaged and have her here for the rehearsal with Mrs. Bowers. She'll double that great queen of clutches. Play the lady in waiting. Not for the last time, I imagine.
Gentle. Thank you, Edwin.
I don't think you will.
I'll let her know.
Larry, don't ask me for anything. Ever again.
No, I don't think I will.
He exits.
Ah! Full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. What's to be done? Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, till thou applaud the deed. Come, ceiling night, scarf up the tender eye of pitiful day, and with thy bloody and invisible hand, cancel and tear to pieces that great bond which keeps me pale. Light thickens and crow makes way to the rooky wood. Good things of day begin to droop and drowse, whilst night's black agents to their praise do rouse. Thou marvelst at my words, but hold thee still. Things bad begun make strong themselves by ill. So prithee, go with me. And tableau and fast curtain, march music from soft to forte at the change, costume change. Oh, note the stage manager. Don't change until the king is seated on throne in the next scene.
He leaps onto the dais and seats himself on the throne. Owen appears.
Mr. Booth, I'm so sorry to disturb you. Jenny went round to your the badger thing. Jenny went round and it's Mrs. Booth. I don't know if it's begun, but Jenny says you should come and bring a doctor with you. There's a lot of blood, Mr. Booth. An awful lot of blood.
Edwin runs off. Owen gathers Edwin's clothes and hat, exits after him. Blackout. End Act 1. Intermission.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Act 1 of The Seeds of Banquo, presented by Theater Red and seen here via Milwaukee Chamber Theater's Facebook page. My name is Brent Hazelton. I am the incoming artistic director of Milwaukee Chamber Theater and certainly delighted to be hosting this evening. So, Marcy,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. This is Marcy Doherty-Elst, everybody, who is one of the founders, correct, of Theater Red?
Yes.
Great. So just tell us a little bit about Theater Red. You're a Milwaukee-based company. How long have you guys been producing?
So my husband, Christopher Elst, and I co-founded Theater Red in 2013. So we're coming up actually October of 2013. So we're coming up on our, I guess, 7-year anniversary. So we founded Theater Red really because we wanted to focus on 3 things. Our founding tenets include substantial roles for women on stage and off, growth and craft for artists, and support for new playwrights, especially local playwrights. And it started really, so the story of how Theater Red started is a friend of ours who is based in Chicago. His name is Jared McDarris. He is a wonderful playwright. He wrote this play, which was a verse adaptation of Arabian Nights called 1,000 Times Good Night. He brought it up to Milwaukee when he was visiting with us and said, you know, we read it around the dining room table, and Christopher said, boy, I'd love to see this on stage. And, you know, Jared said, from your lips to God's ears, right? And Christopher and I had been working as actors, and, you know, Christopher's a fight director and also a director. And he said, well, why don't we try to produce it? You know, we haven't been on the other side of the table, but we know enough people who have. Let's produce it. So we thought, if we're going to produce it, we're going to do it the right way. We're going to set up a Wisconsin company, and we're an LLC. We're not a nonprofit, we're an LLC. Mm-hmm. So we got a Wisconsin employer identification number, filed the paperwork, and rented the studio at Sunset Playhouse. And that's where we did our inaugural production. And since then, we have focused really on local playwrights, world premieres, especially women. We have produced 9 shows, and many of them have been world premieres or Midwest and Wisconsin premieres. So we have Angela's Edwin Booth series, Play Cycle, and we've also produced some works by Liz Shipe. So yeah, that's kind of how we got started.
Super exciting. So where are you still performing primarily in Elm Grove? Do you have a space of your own? Where do people find you?
Great question. We're itinerant. So that gives us a lot of advantages in the sense that we can rent different spaces that suit different needs, and also sort of bring our brand of theater to different local markets. Mm-hmm. But we don't have a brick and mortar. And Christopher and I have talked a lot about, do we want a brick and mortar? What do we do about that? Then we really have to become a venue. And even when we're not producing shows, we have to make sure that we are providing a space. And It's something that comes up regularly because there is a desire to have that brick and mortar home. But there are also so many wonderful spaces that we have been able to rent, both traditional theater spaces and non-traditional theater spaces. When we did I'll Eat You Last, a chat with Sue Mengers, that was directed by Eric Welch, who is an artistic associate with us at Theater Red. We rented the Journeyman Hotel, a space in their hotel, and transformed it into Stu Menger's living room. So we've had an opportunity to rent different spaces and work with different groups. And so we've really enjoyed that. But I think there is a secret love. If one day a chunk of money landed in our laps, we would put up a brick and mortar and provide a space for other theaters as well.
Sure. The site-specific work sounds super exciting.
Yeah,
Talk a little bit more about the Journeyman project. Was it a hotel room you converted, space in the
So
lobby?
it was one of their smaller ballrooms. And actually we went to them. So the play was brought to us by Eric. So if people aren't familiar with it, Sue Menger, she was most famous for being Barbara Streisand's agent. So a big power agent in the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s, a real brassy body woman. But so she was pretty famous for that. And Eric is a huge Barbara Streisand fan. So he knew all about this play, and it is a one-woman play. We went to the Journeyman Hotel and said, hey, you folks are new in the Third Ward. We'd like to do this unique thing where we wonder if we could rent one of your suites and just invite 30 people into the room for an evening for this performance. And because the play takes place in her living room, she never leaves the couch. She just sits there the entire time, which you think would be easy as an actor, but it's really difficult to not have any blocking. Anyway, so we talked to the Journeyman. They were really excited about it because they were new in town. And they said, why would you only want to sell 30 tickets a night? And we said, well, we want to create this feel of sitting in someone's living room, like the way the play takes place. And they said, well, we'll do you one better. We'll rebuild one of our suites with our furniture and everything in this smaller ballroom. And then you can seat, 90 people, which we did at little cabaret tables, and they brought in their couches, and it really was set up sort of like a living room with a bar. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, when you're itinerant, you can use different spaces, and we've rented lots of great theaters, but also you can be creative and find some other unique homes.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah.
What a great partnership. And from the producing side, it certainly is a moment in the world right now where it's great to have real low overhead.
Yes. Although, like I said, there are many, many times we wish we had a place where we could keep all of our stuff and where we had guaranteed rehearsal space and things like that. So we go back and forth on what it means to be an event venue versus a theater, because for us, we produce 2 or 3 shows a year. So we're not running a full heavy season where we'd be using our space all the time.
Right. So what's the long term? What are you hoping that the company grows into? Or are you doing exactly what you want to do right now? I mean, do you want to increase programming? Do you want to beef up new works? I mean, what are the ambitions?
We continue to be interested in providing opportunities for women on stage and off. And we continue to be interested in supporting local playwrights, especially female playwrights, but producing new works, giving those folks a chance to have their words put on a stage. And of course, we're continue to be interested in growth in craft for artists. So we've done some unrehearsed Shakespeare workshops as part of our, so the first folio technique, Patrick Tucker. So we've done some of that as part of our dramaturgy with our cast, but also certainly with Christopher involved as a co-founder, we have a lot of opportunity to teach stage combat as part of our productions, and also do some intimacy coordination training and things like that. So those things continue to be important, but some of the new things since Eric Welch joined our team is we've been doing musicals. So now the idea to collaborate with other theaters or to take a new spin on an older work or bring something to the stage that hasn't been seen in a while musically. So of course he has a great love of musicals. Christopher has a great love of verse. And I'm a generalist. I like everything. And I tend to do the business end of things versus the artistic end of things anyways. So I would say we continue to stick to our roots. Those are important. But, with Eric joining us, we've had some new interest in musical theater, but how we can sort of still do that in a unique way. But Angela is one of our resident playwrights. So she is writing some new plays right now for Theater Red. So it's really kind of nice to have that long-standing collaboration with her. Because of course we did the world premiere of The Seeds of Banquo in 2015. And we rented the space that was formerly Solstice Theater in St. Francis. And then since then we have done This Prison Where I Live. That was a Midwest premiere of Angela's, and we rented the In Tandem space, the 10th Street Theater. So that former space. And then we've got a couple of new projects coming up, and we'll be reading This Prison and Irving and Booth and Othello coming up for you as well. But yeah, it's nice to kind of have her working for us, and she's been busy.
Yeah, no, there's no downside to hanging out with Angela Iannone, that's for sure.
It is a masterclass in this period of American theater history. I have learned so much, not only about Edwin Booth, but about some of these other people who are so important to the American theater tradition and history. And really the nice thing about her plays is you might not have heard of Edwin Booth. You might know his brother, but you might not know how important Edwin Booth is to the theater tradition here. But you wouldn't know Elizabeth Bowers, perhaps, if it wasn't for Angela writing about her. And I'm biased to Lizzie, of course, because I
Sure.
originated the role, and I'm quite connected to her. But some of these other women, Augusta Foster, Owen Fawcett, Lawrence Barrett, she has given these people a new life on the page because they were Edwin Booth's contemporaries. And we might not know as much about them if she wasn't working so hard to preserve their legacy alongside his. So I think that's pretty cool.
It is great. No, it's hugely valuable as a history major by training and a theater historian, certainly by interest. That's yeah, all that is so valuable.
Do you know
you have to
some?
know.
Do you know some famous firsts about Edwin Booth? Like he's got a lot of famous fun facts.
Lay them on us.
Okay,
What's
so the Booth Theater was the first to be both air conditioned and heated. Edwin Booth was the first to lower the lights in the house during the performance. And he did that because he wanted to draw the audience's attention to what was going on stage with the light. So he was the first person to do that. We all think that's very common. We go to a show, the house lights go down. That wasn't done before. They thought that was very strange when he did it. So he was the first there. He was the first to use hydraulic lifts to assist with quick changes of scenery. I've got a whole bunch of these, but yeah, like he's a really interesting, cool guy. And, you know, you could sit down for an entire week and just learn so much about him and this period of American history, just talking to Angela. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Edwin Booth's signature is on view at the Newsroom Bar. So
is it?
from,
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he and Pabst were friends, and he actually worked with a lot of the German-speaking actors here in Milwaukee.
Oh, that's really neat.
Yeah. What else is another fun first? Edwin was the first actor in America to perform Henry V.
Huh.
Oh, I could go on for hours. How long does this intermission go? How long do
I don't know. I was going to say we're coming up on 10 minutes. It's up to you guys when you want to jump back in. Before we get back in, we should also remind people that if they would like to support Theater Ed, contribute to the work that they're doing, they can find you on Venmo at Theater-Red, Theater TER.
Yes.
And what's your web address for people who want to check out more?
It's www.theaterred.com, and it's the ERRED.
Excellent.
And the reason why we did that is because Christopher wanted it, he thought it was kind of a fun play to look at it, to say you've been theatered, as a, you know, and also to use it kind of in that way. And Theater Ed was, you know, we just played with the words in there.
For sure. Yeah, it's fun.
Christopher and I are both redheads, so that is where Theater Red comes from. A lot of people ask, where does it come from? We both have red hair. His, you can still see in his beard, just not as much on top.
Nice. Great. Well, if you guys are ready to roll again, we'll get right back into it. Yeah.
I think we are, unless there was anything that you wanted me to talk about, but I went on some other tangent.
No, that's all super good and fun. And really just giving people an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you all and more about the company, so that when we are in a space again where we can do this, you know, all in the same room, folks are looking out for you and they know where to find you.
Thank you. That's one of the great things about this community, is just how collaborative and how we all work together. And, you know, together we are stronger. So
yeah,
for
sure. Absolutely. No, thank you. It's a pleasure sharing our channels with you all.
Thank you.
Great. So I'm going to get out of here again. You all enjoy the second act. And as Marcy was saying, we'll be back the next 2 Wednesdays with 2 more installments in Angela's series. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for sticking around through our technical challenges to get up and rolling. It's an adventure every time to see which platform is sort of going to have the bandwidth and signal strength to support a thing at any given moment. And yeah, On with Act 2. Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, Theater Red. And thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Have a good night.
Act 2, The Seeds of Banquo. Later that same day, there is no change in the set. Larry appears.
Edwin. Ned. Come, Minna. The throne appears to be vacant for now.
He moves to the throne, removes his hat, gloves, and jacket. Minna enters. She has a straw basket standing in for a purse. In the basket is her 3-page script and an apple.
No one here. It feels marvelous. Big.
If you say so. Open your text. If we have a few minutes, let me instruct you on this scene. Pick up with "My Royal Lord." I think you'll find it on page 49.
Well, I only have 3 pages for the gentlewoman.
Don't you have this? Haven't you committed it to memory?
Well, I have the emotions. I don't have all the words yet. Not Shakespeare's words.
If you don't have his words, it doesn't matter what else you might have on offer. Here.
He tosses her a small pocket-sized bound edition of Macbeth he has taken from his pocket.
Banquet, 3-4.
I beg pardon?
Roman numerals, scene and act numbers at the top of the page. 3 sticks, then stick V.
I found it.
Larry picks up the crown and puts it on.
First murderer says, "Most royal sir, Fleance escaped. Then comes my fit again. I had else been perfect, whole as the marble, founded as the rock, as broad and general as the casing air. But now I am cabined, cribbed, confined, bound in to saucy doubts and fears. But Banquo safe?" First murderer speaks again. "Ay, my good lord, safe in a ditch he bides, with 20 trenched gashes on his head, the least a death to nature. Me. Thanks for that. There the grown serpent lies, the worm that's fled."
Who is that?
Who is whom?
The serpent, the worm.
Minna.
I only have 3 pages. How am I to know?
The grown serpent is Banquo. He is dead now, safely dead. Macbeth has had him killed. The worm is Banquo's son, Fleance. He has escaped the murderers. He is the next king. According to the witches, at any rate, the seeds of Banquo will be kings.
Only if Fleance isn't played by a girl. But isn't Malcolm the king at the end of it?
Excellent. Yes, Duncan's son Malcolm is king.
But that means the end isn't really the end.
Usually the audience ignores that. Shall we go on? There the grown serpent lies. The worm that's fled hath nature that in time will venom breed. No teeth for the present. Get thee gone. Tomorrow we'll hear ourselves again. First murderer exits. There. There. What are you doing?
Reading this. You have all of Mr. Booth's business written in here.
Yes, why are you over there?
You aren't doing it the way he has it in the stage directions. It makes sense the way he has it written, but you aren't doing that. Mr. Booth...
You make me tired with the infinite number of times you have said that this afternoon. Mr. Booth. Why, man, he doth bestride the narrow world like a colossus, and we petty men walk under his huge legs and peep about to find ourselves dishonorable graves. The fault, dear Minna, is not in our stars, but in ourselves that we are underlings. Barrett and Booth. What should be in that booth? Ha! If I'd been born 20 years before, it would have been my name in everyone's mouth.
His father was alive then.
I could have stood against his father, drunk more often than he was sober, and a very limited range, even when he remembered his lines. No, we would be standing on the stage of the Barrett Theater, and Booth would be the apprentice actor here. I am a great actor born in the time of Edwin Booth, and strive as I might, all I hear is...
Enter Mrs. Bowers and Owen Fawcett. Mrs. Bowers has changed her hat. It is quite imposing.
Mr. Booth said I was to...
Yes, I know. Miss Gale and I were rehearsing. She is to double you and learn your business. Mr. Booth gave me instructions.
Oh,
Bloody hell.
Mr. Fawcett. Where is he then? Mr. Booth?
He was called for. His wife.
Was he? That explains it. He's usually here well before the time he's required. Is it time?
Oh, well, time. You know how it goes waiting on a child, Mr. Baird.
There won't be a show without Mr. Booth. Should we be rehearsing then?
I want to, please.
If Mr. Fawcett would oblige us by reading in the other characters.
I meant to meet Jenny for lunch. I only walked Mrs. Bowers over.
Please, Mr. Fawcett.
I don't know, Miss Gale.
Mrs. Bowers, if you would wait.
Should you be quite so undressed, Mr. Barrett?
What were you doing as we came in?
I've said we were rehearsing.
Of course. But what? I meant, where in the play are you?
Banquet scene.
3-4.
The entrance of the murderers. Fleance escaped.
Yourself is the king, and she the queen?
Mm-hmm.
Only to most royal Sir Fleance escaped?
Then comes my fit again. I had else been perfect, whole as the marble, founded as the rock, as broad and general as the casing air. But now I am cabined, cribbed, confined.
Hungry.
Oh,
Bound in to saucy doubts and fears. But Banquo's safe.
Mayn't I get a bite of something before we start, Mr. Baird? I'm feeling poorly. I haven't eaten yet today. Jenny was in no mood to cook for me.
even you, Mr. Fawcett, must have the brains it takes to scramble an egg.
Don't like eggs.
Please, Mr. Fawcett, if you would please help. I've got some ideas to make her more modern, more natural.
Natural?
Modern?
Lady Macbeth?
I want to try. Please?
I'm not sure what any of that means, Miss Gale, but I think I might like to see that. Aye, my good lord, safe in a ditch he bides, with 20 trenched gashes on his head, the least a death to nature.
Thanks for that.
That's a pause, dear. He's got more to say. Naturally.
Yes, I do. There the grown serpent lies. The worm that's fled hath nature that in time will venom breed. No teeth for the present.
Goblet.
It says Mr. Booth will pick up the goblet here.
I will not.
Then what's the pause for?
Get thee gone. Tomorrow we'll hear ourselves again.
I exit. May I go and eat now?
No, stay for Lennox.
My royal lord, you do not give the cheer the feast is sold, that is not often vouched while 'tis a making, 'tis given the welcome. To feed,
you sound as if you don't know what you are saying. Is that modern?
I don't.
You don't?
No, I mean, I sound that way.
Yes.
Tell me.
My royal lord, well, he's king now. They are, what is the word?
Coronated.
Crowned.
Yes, yes.
You do not give the cheer. That is the wine Mr. Booth picked up earlier, but you did not, so I don't.
Fine. I pick up the goblet.
Why is it square?
So it doesn't roll when it's dropped, Miss Gale.
Well, you don't. He doesn't give a toast. A toast like, oh, I don't know.
The dew may kiss the morning grass, the clock may kiss the hours past, a knight may kiss a maiden lass, and you, my friends,
Mr. Fawcett.
drink hearty.
Go on, Miss Gale.
The toast. He hasn't given any toast, so the dinner is ruined.
Say it like that, then. Sweet remembrancer, Now good digestion wait on appetite and health on both.
Exit first, murderer, and I'm going to eat.
Lennox again.
Right! May it please your highness, sit!
Here had we now our country's honor roofed were the graced person of our Banquo present, who I may rather challenge for unkindness than pity for mischance.
Who speaks?
Ross.
He does? Ross gets a line? Bless him. His absence, lays blame upon his promise. Please, your highness, to grace us with your royal company.
Now, you secret black and midnight hags, what is't you do?
Edwin, dear Ned, what are you doing here?
Larry crosses to Edwin, handing off the goblet to Minna and the crown to Owen. As he does, both end up on the table.
I owned the place. You are rehearsing without me.
Well, with the ladies, we thought...
We?
Is everything all right with Mrs. Booth? Should I not have asked that?
It appears not.
There are so many things one mustn't do around Mr. Booth. No touching, no talking about the wife, or the first wife, or the brother.
Why not his brother? What's wrong with asking about June Booth?
Not that brother.
Oh, you are young, aren't you?
Ned, why are you...
Mary has been given laudanum. She doesn't even know I am there. No need to sit with her. Don't touch me! I have to be here.
You don't. You don't have to. We can. I can.
You can what?
We can keep rehearsing until you are ready. At the very least...
I'm not interested in the very least. Not now and not at any time. You don't understand me at all if you think there is any of the least in my blood. I am ready now. We will continue. Get off my throne. Have you been usurped, Mrs. Bowers? Was there a revolution among the secondary players? Mr. Fawcett, are you jockeying for a salary from me? Will I have to enlist you in my company simply because you are always here? Miss Gale, what do you here, Miss Gale?
Mr. Barrett said I should come. He said you'd agreed I should double Mrs. Bowers.
So I did, but that was only partly what I was asking. Mrs. Bowers, shall we?
Am I to take your hand?
That was a summons, Mrs. Bowers, not an invitation.
Edwin takes Mrs. Bowers' hand and kisses it.
Well, wonders never cease.
Hat? Your hat, as magnificent as it is unlikely to be proper in the dining hall of Dunsinane.
Does everyone have to remove an article of clothing to work with you, Mr. Booth?
Mrs. Bowers removes her hat. Edwin picks up the saber, impales the crown on it, and crosses back to the throne. He places the crown on one of the spindles of the throne.
Think of this, good peers, but as a thing, Mrs. Bowers.
I beg your pardon?
From think of this, good peers. That line, Mrs. Bowers, there is a business at the end of the act, as we discussed.
Think of this, good peers, but as a thing of custom. 'Tis no other, only it spoils the pleasure of the time.
Here's your chance, man. Are you here or not? Step forward, ghost, and be recognized. What man dare? I dare. Approach thou like the rugged Russian bear, the armed rhinoceros, or the Hyrcan tiger. Take any shape but that, and my firm nerves shall never tremble, or be alive again, and dare me to the desert with thy sword, if trembling I inhabit then. Protest me, the baby of a girl. Hence, horrible shadow! Unreal mockery! Hence!
He swings the saber wildly. Larry moves out of range. The others rise, unsure. Edwin is shaken as if clutched by a ghostly hand. He is thrown to the floor and he breathes heavily. He rises and is still. The others are horrified and concerned.
Why so? Being gone, I am a man again. Pray you, sit still.
You have displaced the mirth, broke the good meeting with most admired disorder.
Can such things be, and overcome us like a summer's cloud without our special wonder? You make me strange, even to the disposition that I owe, when now I think you can behold such sights and keep the natural ruby of your cheeks when mine is blanched with fear.
What sights, my lord?
Edwin sinks down at the foot of the throne, lets the saber slip to the ground.
I pray you, speak not. He grows worse and worse. Question enrages him. At once, good night. Stand not upon the order of your going, but go at once.
Oh, I hate this. Is he acting or not?
Yes.
Good night, and better health attend his majesty.
You can probably go and dine now.
Not bloody likely.
It will have blood. They say, blood will have blood. Stones have been known to move, and trees to speak. Augurs and understood relations have, by maggot pies and choughs and rooks, brought forth the secrets, man, of blood. Come to me now, Mrs. Bowers. Come and put your hand to my shoulder. Come softly and slowly, madam. Reach slow to me. What is the night? Move right, madam.
Almost at odds with morning. Which is which?
How sayst thou that Macduff denies his person at our great bidding? Come to me.
When I'm ready, I will. Did you send to him, sir?
I hear it by the way, but I will send. There's not a one of them, but in his house I keep a servant feed. I will tomorrow, and betimes I will to the Wayard sisters. More shall they speak, for now I am bent to know by the worst means the worst. For mine own good, all causes shall give way. I am in blood, stepped in so far that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as go o'er. Strange things I have in head that will to hand, which must be acted ere they may be scanned.
You lack the season of all natures. Sleep.
Oh. Come. Will to sleep. My strange and self-abuse is the initiate fear that wants hard use. We are but young indeed. Come. Come to me.
Edwin raises his hand to the crown, removes it and looks at it. His hand relaxes and Mrs. Bowers sinks to her knees.
Lovely. Stay there on your knees, Mrs. Bowers.
Mrs. Bowers reaches for the crown.
Now you understand me. There will be a very, very slow curtain and thunder.
Thunder.
Oh, Mr. Booth, that was magnificent.
I'll have to agree, Mr. Booth. That will work nicely.
I want to try.
No.
Try.
No.
Why not?
She isn't. As you said, it's your rehearsal.
Yes, it is.
He rises, picks up his saber.
So, Larry, having imagined yourself here, crawled up from the pit of the theater, under the tables and among the shoes of the extras in the scene, by the grace of the theater gods, not having pulled down a tablecloth or upset a plate of paper paste food, show me where you are now, where you would be if you were to be here.
A pointless exercise, as I shan't be.
Show me. Come on.
Very well.
He gets up on the table, takes an apple out of Minna's basket, puts it in his mouth, and stares down at Edwin.
Hence, horrible shadow! Unreal mockery! Hence!
An ugly series of swings very close to Larry, who refuses to flinch. Edwin notices Minna is not in position to start the scene, crosses to her, takes her hand, pulls Minna into an embrace facing Larry, his sword pointed at Larry.
This would be the exit of the ghost. Larry?
Larry climbs down from the table, drops the apple, turns and looks at Edwin.
Yes. Awkward. Why so? Being gone, I am a man again.
Minna touches Edwin's face.
Pray you.
She strokes his face.
You have dispersed the mirth, broke the good feast with disorder.
I can't hear her. Can you hear her?
I hear her.
Yes, she is heard.
Edwin pushes Minna back towards the throne. He lifts her onto the throne, pushes her legs open with his knee, and kneels between her legs, the two of them almost kissing.
Can such things be and overcome us like a summer's cloud without our special wonder? Make me strange even to the disposition that I owe, when now I think you can behold such sights and keep the natural ruby of your cheeks, when mine is blanched with fear. Mr. Fawcett,
Huh?
there is a line in here.
Yes, so the bloody is. What sights, my lord?
Edwin slides down Minna's body to sink to the ground at the foot of the throne. Minna sinks with him, pulling him in to her body.
I pray you, speak not, question him not. At once, good night. Stand not upon the order of your going, but go.
Edwin, his head in Minna's lap, begins to caress her face.
It will have blood. They say blood will have blood. Stones have been known to move and trees to speak. Augurs and understood relations have by maggot pies and choughs and rooks brought forth the secrets, man of blood. What is the night?
Enough.
You'll be arrested or rioted off the stage. It's obscene. If that is naturalism.
Damn.
Are you eager to know by the worst means the worst? Don't you enjoy this version?
No, I don't.
It's a little grabby.
It obscures the story. Or I think it tells another story, one that hasn't to do with this play. I'm sorry, Minna. It's awful.
I don't understand. What is happening?
Larry extends his hand to Minna.
Miss Gale. Minna.
I warned you.
Do you think it was awful?
Miss Gale.
Do you?
if the entire audience could sit where I am, this close to you, and see you as I see you, the performance is as honest, as open, as modern as any I have ever seen. But the entire audience cannot be seated here. Some of them are 80 feet away, 100 feet in the air. From that distance, the only thing that is discernible is what comes before a kiss.
He reaches for her, almost kisses her open-mouthed.
And what comes after. Kiss itself is too small to be of interest. The frame of what we watch, and therefore the size of our thoughts, is larger. A whole history of intimacy must be implied in larger gestures.
Larry reaches out and pulls Minna up.
As you see. And Miss Gale, as lovely as you are, they have not come to see you. They have come to see me. My Macbeth.
Damn it!
My king in my theater with my supporting company.
Your point is made.
Is it?
I'm convinced.
I'm not to double Mrs. Bowers.
That was not doubling, that was indulgence. If you understood that doubling means doing the business as Mr. Booth requests, as we have crafted it, if you were able to do that, you might avoid shutting the whole company down on obscenity charges. But this natural interpretation will not do, Minna. Not do at all.
Ms. Bowers, perhaps a little tolerance for Ms. Gale's ambition?
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 Bloody hell.
Larry, I believe Miss Gale will not be needed for this rehearsal. You may escort her home.
Now.
What did I do? Am I the gentlewoman? And for Mrs. Bowers, the double?
Some people cannot be doubled, Miss Gale. Not for love, money, or even necessity. The rehearsal tomorrow will include the sleepwalking scene. Mrs. Bowers, the doctor, and the lady in waiting will be required. That would be you, Miss Gale.
I see. Lady in waiting.
She places a hand on her stomach, pulls Larry's hand over it.
Larry, pick up a saber.
Is this what I think it is?
This bloody cursed play is what it is. Witches and curses and bloody dead children. And now we're starting swinging sabers about. Oof.
Edwin, I didn't know.
Pick one up and come on your guard.
Are you...
Pick it up!
Saber, no broadsword.
I won't wear out my energy swinging a great damned broadsword.
Edwin picks up the saber and comes on guard.
Of all men else, I have avoided thee, but get thee back. My soul is too much charged with blood of thine already. Are you going to speak?
I have no words. My voice is in my sword.
Edwin swings at Larry.
Are you just going to hack at me, or shall I be given direction?
Guard 5. 1. Larry, that was 7. 3, 2, turn, because I am behind you now.
He tosses Larry face down onto the table and spanks him once with his saber. Larry scrambles up again.
Pay attention. Get your point up.
Go slower.
Thrust cut. 5, 2, 2. I said 2.
2 twice or only once?
Once.
A pass. Larry blocks Edwin's strike, and Edwin switches sword hands and backhands Larry fiercely.
You're slapping Macduff.
No. Quick, or Macbeth will win this one.
Another pass. Edwin backhands Larry again.
Turn. Guard.
What number?
Pick one. I don't care.
Edwin forces Larry back against the table, disarms Larry, and points both blades at him.
And thus, the entire history of the English monarchy is rewritten, and poor Shakespeare is forgot. And all because Mr. Barrett is a very poor combatant.
Macbeth is meant to lose.
To Macduff, not Banquo. And off stage, not on. I am pursued off stage.
Owen takes the sabers from Edwin.
Larry.
Gather your things, Miss Gale. I'll see you get home. I've been given leave to leave.
You and I rehearse tomorrow as well, Larry.
At a decent hour, Ned, if you please.
I'll bring you breakfast. Miss Gale, I shall look forward to watching your development. Larry, where shall I find you?
Rooftop. Crowing.
They exit. Edwin throws a gauntlet after them, sits heavily on the throne.
I think I've missed something.
I think you've missed your lunch appointment with your fiancé.
Oh, damn it all. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Booth, Mrs. Bowers, Mr. Booth, if you should get a chance to see my show, Doggrass.
He exits.
All my rehearsals seem to end like this.
You are a bit of a force, Mr. Booth. It takes a certain kind of stamina to work with you. That recent bit was quite something.
Do you refer to the fight?
All of them. No one gets as far in a career as I have by being a fool, Mr. Booth, whatever you might think about women on the stage. I think my mother would have called you a pistol.
Would she?
Yes. You are exhausting.
That I've been told.
The dead child.
What?
You said earlier, the dead child that is between Macbeth and his wife.
Yes.
You believe they have lost a child?
She says, I have given suck and know how tender it is to love the babe that milks me.
You don't believe that is just Shakespeare being ornamental, an extreme example of her devotion to him? She finishes by saying she would dash the baby's brains out.
She isn't capable of an act like that. If she were, she would not express her weakness at the sight of the sleeping Duncan.
Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it.
It's the blood. All the blood prompts her decline into the madness that turns her in on herself and eventually claims her. I told you before, we come upon them at the point where their relationship is failing. Macbeth is sick of his life with her long before he is tainted by the murders. The child they lost is too great a burden for him, for them both. The blow of losing a son.
It was a son?
An heir, of course, a son. A daughter is a puzzlement, always on the verge of slipping away. Her mother's face, but not her mother. A reminder that the mother is gone. Sometimes a trick of inherited lilt in the voice that makes you turn in surprise to see if she has returned, but always slipping away.
Ah.
But a son, that is an inheritance, another self, and your own father's face, your brother's face, all a past and the promise of immortality. And she?
Lady Mrs. Macbeth, what does she see?
Troubled with thick coming fancies that keep her from her rest, as the doctor says, and Macbeth's response is too beautiful to be anything but true. Cure her of that. Canst thou not minister to a mind diseased? Pluck from the memory a rooted sorrow, raise out the written troubles of the brain, and with some sweet, oblivious antidote, cleanse the stuffed bosom of that perilous stuff which weighs upon the heart.
And all this over the child?
It's prompted by the witches, compounded by the murders. It festers with his lack of sleep. Their passion and care for each other is broken, but it starts with the child.
The historical truth is that she speaks of her son by her first husband, the one before Macbeth, the one related to King Duncan.
There isn't any room in contemporary productions for historical truth, Mrs. Bowers, and even if there were, nothing could be less compelling. Shakespeare isn't interested in it, and neither am I. You can't expect an audience to sit down with the pedigree of the English royal family or the Scots royal family all in their head. We must find a way to bring the interest back to the story that is being told in front of them for our purposes. It is the child they lost.
You are thinking a lot about children.
The play is partly about inheritance, deserved inheritance. It gets tangled. Fleance, Malcolm, the son we never hear spoken of again, Donalbain, the possibility, the hope of my own son is expected.
How can you know it to be a boy?
Mary says she does. Something about the way she is carrying.
Ah, yes. Carrying high means a boy.
She's tiny, though. Mary is. She's slight and frail. Tiny, I have concerns.
Doctors are so much better now than they have been in years past, Mr. Booth. They have wonderful instruments to help.
Horrify me. Mrs. Bowers, I don't know that I've had a conversation this long with one of my leading ladies. I find myself embarrassed.
I'm surprised, Mr. Booth. One of our most eloquent actors, uncomfortable with speaking.
Who is the other?
I beg pardon?
You said one of. Who is the other most eloquent?
Oh, Mr. Booth. And they say you have no sense of humor.
I was sincere. Madam, this rehearsal is a failure. Let us start fresh tomorrow.
And tomorrow, and tomorrow?
Mrs. Burrows, aren't you afraid of the curse on this play?
Mr. Booth, I don't know if you are aware of it, but there is a greater curse on working with you.
What do you mean?
A person has to be very secure in themselves to take a job with you. It could end up being the one opportunity that launches you on a brilliant career, or the only thing that anyone ever remembers about you, that you once worked with Edwin Booth.
Ah.
You might keep that thought foremost the next time you take a fancy to beat Mr. Barrett like a red-headed stepchild. He is quite a marvelous actor, you know. He adores you.
Yes.
That isn't something to be set lightly aside, that kind of friendship. Even for someone for whom adoration is as old hat as it must be for you. He'll be all right. Miss Gale is aiming higher than an ambitious actor. She likes her comforts, that one. She'll leave him alone soon enough.
Perhaps not soon enough. If it's him she's aiming for.
Oh, she is an interesting young thing. An Ophelia, perhaps. If she gets a good launch, she'll serve.
And you, Mrs. Bowers? How shall I serve you?
Oh, la, my dear, dear sir. This would be the time to remind you I've been at this every minute as long as you have. My sister and I started about the same age you must have done. 14? Yes, I remember your father and your brother.
You and your sister must have been the merest children when June and his acting career here in New York. I don't know how.
I don't mean June. I mean your younger. I owned the Walnut Street Theater directly after you did. Did you know? From tattered old melodramas to the fire-new modern plays of domestic upheaval, I am here and I thrive. I've outlived 2 husbands who were broken by this career, and I was not. We'll see how the 3rd one wears. But it has always been me in the role of breadwinner, Mr. Booth. I've been in retirement, or thought I was until I was contacted by your manager. Come looking for someone of sufficient and celebrity to play opposite you. So here's a bee for your own bonnet. I am well respected and well paid. I don't need a launch from you, kind as you are to offer. For the future, I believe I'll be remembered for myself and not for being a minor star in your particular heaven. You are better than your father was. Certainly kinder, and not so much shouting.
I believe in the natural style, Mrs. Bowers. My father was rather grand. He loved this play. So full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. It will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood. No, that's not me. Mrs. Bowers, if you will play this role as I've requested of you.
It's a pity you don't rehearse more often, Mr. Booth. Or I should say, rehearse with others more often.
Yes? Well,
Here's a thought for you, Mr. Booth. Even on its best day, Macbeth is a play about things that are not.
I don't...
Oof. In the play itself, is there a bloody ghost or isn't there? For that matter, is there blood or isn't there? Will Hecate be included or cut? Will the witches sing, fly, dance, or just speak? And then, how many deaths will we look upon? Will the women be women? Will the men be the women? Will the women only be children, or will there be no children? Does the lady replay the things she has done, or only her own unquiet dreams? So much of the play is about what is not, that it needs rehearsing, Mr. Booth, to find what there is.
Lots of thunder, lots of darkness and aching, empty space. This isn't pageantry. This is damnation.
I like your ideas. You aren't just a handsome face. You've a brilliant mind in there as well.
I'm not sure I should be flattered, Mrs. Bowers.
You may call me Elizabeth, Mr. Booth. It's quite all right, Mr. Booth. It isn't a gesture that implies a relationship. Elizabeth is my name, which you may use.
Thank you, Thank you, Lizzie. Have you ever wondered why the lady isn't called by her first name in the play?
Oh, Mr. Booth, one doesn't have to be a grand scholar to know that. She has perhaps the ugliest name in history. It is Groach. Hard to whisper that with any kind of fondness. I look forward to our rehearsal, and I will review my lines in light of what you have mentioned. It is an interesting and much darker view of this relationship than any I've ever seen performed. It begins at a point of power and crumbles from there. No touching, dead children, and blood. Good day, Mr. Booth. Till tomorrow.
She exits. Edwin puts the crown on his head.
Tomorrow. And tomorrow. And tomorrow. Creeps in this petty pace from day to day, to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. Oh, my dear Shakespeare. None of your kings end happily, except Henry V. And that only because the play ends with his courtship of his queen. The curtain comes down on the first kiss, and we don't see what comes after.
Owen enters.
Mr. Fawcett, back so soon?
Mr. Booth, there's some news, Jenny said.
Thou comest to use thy tongue, thy story, quickly, Mr. Fawcett.
They lied to you, Mr. Booth. The doctor and the midwife. You need to come, Mr. Booth. You need to come now. There's a decision. You must make a decision.
Decision.
Please hurry, Mr. Booth. You have to decide between the two. They can't both live.
Yes. No.
Edwin drops the crown and exits. Owen follows quickly. Blackout. End of play. So thank you all so very much for joining us this evening. Do not forget, tip your performers. The address of the Venmo tip jar is there on the Facebook page. I thank Milwaukee Chamber Theater so very much. I thank Theater Red so very much, and this marvelous band of players. Tune in next Wednesday for the Next in the Booth series. And thank you so very much for joining us this evening. Good night.